Hello everybody. Welcome to the webinar Developing a Comparable Child Protection Index, the Experience of ChildPact. My name is Evgenia Generalova and I'm the Communications and Knowledge Manager for the Child Hub. If you can hear me well, can you please write something in the chat in the bottom right corner? It says I'm sure we are all on the same page. Yes, I can see people writing hello. Nice. Great. So, I would like to guide you very briefly through some basic technical rules so we all feel comfortable during the webinar. You can now see them on the screen. So, we have two options for communicating in writing with you. There are Q&A section on the right, which please use for technical, thematic questions to the presenter. And there is also a chat window below it, which you're welcome to use for any technical issues, like you have no sound, or I don't know, you're being logged out constantly or whatever. We face all kinds of different technical issues, and this is okay. We will try and help you if something happens. Either me or my colleague Judith. Also, your microphones will be muted, so please, whatever you want to say, do this in writing. Also, please pay attention to polls. You might have already seen one. I will open it again here. If you didn't vote yet, please do so now. And also, we will have one more at the end. Also, please make sure your speaker icon is green. You can see it on the bar on the top. And also there on the right, you can see an icon of a man with a raised hand. This one you can use to show your emotions, suggestions. You can play with it now if you want to try. And now I would like to introduce you our presenters. We are going to have two of them, Andy and Mirella. Let me tell you a little bit about them, and then I will give floor to Mirella. So Mirella Oprea is currently ChildPact Secretary General and Senior Liaison Manager at World Division Middle East and Eastern Europe. She started her career as volunteer in Romania's first helpline for abused children, and she also covered various roles in civil society organizations in Romania, Italy, Belgium. She served as the president of Arcadia and as a board member of FOND in Romania. And more recently, she helped create the Romanian Association of the Adults from Children's Homes. She thinks that successful child protection reform demands a regional response, and she shares stories and thoughts about children's issues on her personal blog, which I'm sure she's willing to share with you if you're interested. And then we are also going to listen to Andy Booth, who is a co-author and the data collection manager of the Child Protection Index. He is one of the leading child protection specialists in the region with over 25 years of work experience in child welfare and protection. And his portfolio includes work with various national and international NGOs, UN agencies and governments. Andy was directly involved in the design and implementation of the child welfare reform programs for Romania and Bulgaria, and he also contributed to developing the child welfare services network in Moldova, and also promoted child welfare system reforms in Russia. And this sounds all very impressive to me. So I'm happy to give the floor to Mirella. Give me a second and I will put her presentation on. If you don't see it in a minute, please let us know. And now, Mirella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Evgenia, for this very nice introduction. I will follow your example and I will ask people if they can hear me. So if you people can give me some feedback on the chat. Yes, we can. Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you so much. Evgenia, first of all, thank you so much for hosting us. We are very grateful for your service and very honored to be able to present one of our dearest projects here in ChildPact, the Child Protection Index. I will start with this quote from Mariana, who is our president. Mariana is from Moldova, a very active member of the Moldavian coalition. And she recently said about the Child Protection Index that she likes it very much because by using this approach, we can compare country reforms and progress with an eye towards strategic cooperation. So now, indeed, regional cooperation is one of the ChildPact objectives, one out of 4 actually, and I would like just to mention 3 of the ChildPact strategic objectives to start with, so that you see that this is very nicely aligned with everything that we have in our strategy. So our first objective is to monitor child protection reforms in our region and try to influence them. And this is why we built the Child Protection Index because we felt that we don't have a dedicated and very strong and independent instrument to monitor the child protection reforms, and at the same time information available to be able to influence the reforms in our region. Now, the second objective of ChildPact is about strengthening the capacity of our members. And the index is also built with this idea because we wanted to provide the members of ChildPact with an instrument that is very strong for their national level advocacy. By the way, when we say ChildPact members, we mean networks of networks. ChildPact is a regional coalition, and our members are not individual NGOs or individuals as such, but networks of networks. We have members in 10 different countries in Southeast Europe and Caucasus. And the third objective that we have is to advocate for regional cooperation. Now, why regional cooperation is important for us? Because obviously we are a regional coalition, and one of our aims is to learn from each other and to stop reinventing the wheels. In the region, we have wonderful models, but we feel that they are not shared. So sometimes we keep rediscovering the same things. Now, just a few words about how the idea to build the Child Protection Index came around. It was first discussed in September 2012 in a meeting that was hosted by our Bulgarian member. And you can see here on this slide some of the leaders of this idea, some of those who were there at that meeting, who contributed to making the decision about creating the instrument, and also some of those who joined us at a later stage to help us in the implementation and development phase. What you see here is mostly presidents or executive directors of national coalitions, members of the ChildPact Secretariat, a bit of myself. In the middle, you can see Mariana, who is the author of the quote. And of course, you can also see Andy. Yeah, thank you very much for the arrow. You can also see Andy and so on. Okay, so what is it, this Child Protection Index? We are very happy to call it an independent instrument that measures each country's level of development and performance on child protection. Why do we want to measure that? I already mentioned it's for advocacy purposes. As coalitions, our role is obviously not to offer direct services to children, but to advocate for better policies and legislation. But there is a lot of resistance sometimes to the changes that we advocate for. We all know that deinstitutionalization, for instance, is something that we have a lot of resistance about. So we need information, we need data to convince our counterparts that our ideas are solid and worth taking into consideration. And we also are proud because results are comparable across the region. And why do we want the results to be comparable? For one thing is what I said before, to stop reinventing the wheel. So in a nutshell, the Child Protection Index is about providing evidence-based information to policy changes, policy debates that we want to promote in our national context and at regional level. Also, one of the aims that we have is to try to bring together various actors, sectors, and various agendas that we have that exist in the region. This is because a lot of interest came around the index. We were very surprised, for instance, in Georgia when we launched the index. The beauty of it and the fact that it is very intuitive and easy to understand got a lot of media attention. So our president, the president of the National Coalition in Georgia, all of a sudden was a very required person for the national televisions, radios, and so on. We were very, in a way, surprised to see how much media attraction it attracts because it's easy to understand. And once you have visibility, of course, a lot of partners, a lot of people in the respective country, in the respective context, will start to pay attention to the recommendations, the general recommendations that we are making. So we want to identify needs and gaps in our efforts, and this is important. One of them, not only one, but some of the experts who contributed to collecting the data for the index told us that it was such an interesting experience because even if she is a child protection reform expert in her country, she learned so much in the process of collecting the additional information. She said she was not aware about how many gaps and actually also about how much progress was done in the country before being part of this index. So it's not only to put it in the face, to throw it in the face of the national government, but also to give ourselves an image of what we are doing. We also want to encourage new efforts in data collection because we all know that in this region data is so scarce. We do not produce, however, statistical data. The index is not about collecting or generating new statistical data, but using the data that exists in a way that provides new insights into what we are doing. And again, providing a platform to regional learning from each other. This is very important from ChildPact's point of view. One of the objectives that we have is about that. Now, and this is my last slide. We have 20-something slides, and there is an unequal division of labor between myself and Andy. Andy will have the most of it. So just to say about the progress that we made today towards the index, we started from with a big question. Is this index needed in our region? Are we wise to invest in this initiative? So the way we answered that question is with the help of a couple of consultants from the academia who helped us developing a study and answer that question. They looked at a number of measuring instruments that have been built around the world, so not only in our region, around the world, and they looked at the instruments, they looked at methodology, assessment grids, and all sorts of things. And after a lot of analysis and thinking and debates in the ChildPact leadership group, we realized that, well, you know, something like we want to do, it is not yet built. So this encouraged us to go ahead. We have been inspired by other indexes in the region, in the world, like for instance the Human Development Index, the Europeanization Index, which is very much specific to our region, and some others. Now, the other points about how we developed the index framework and the indicators and how we started to pilot it, I think I will pass this to Andy, because Andy, as Evgenia said, is our data collection manager, and he knows probably much more than I do about anything. So thank you very much for listening to this introduction, and Andy, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirela, for passing the presentation to me. I hope everybody can hear me as well. I will ask, as you did, people to give me a sign. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. Right, so this is where I actually stepped in when it came about developing the Child Protection Index metrics, and the big question was where to start from. And the most obvious place to start with was clearly the UNCRC. Because it is a document that it was ratified by all the countries in the region, so there's no question about that. So from a child rights approach point of view, it was the document to look at. Anyway, the CRC is a very big document, so, and we wanted to develop a child protection index, not a child rights index. So the first thing to do was to select those articles which are child protection related, and at the end of the day we selected the articles that you see on the screen now. Besides these articles, we also used Article 4 of the UNCRC for the general environment of implementation of the index. Well, of course that this was a first step, and then we realized that the UNCRC has this implementation guidelines, and we were thinking, well, let's look at the implementation guidelines, and we realized that the implementation guidelines have some checklist of indicators. So basically and we realized that those are perfect for our needs, because those indicators were formulated as questions which should be responded with yes, no, or partially, which made them perfect for our index. So basically we took the most relevant indicators from these implementation checklists in order to use them for our index. We also added some because obviously the CRC was not developed with an index in mind, so we did have to add some indicators ourselves. However, all these indicators are qualitative indicators, so we needed to figure out some quantitative data, quantitative indicators as well. And for this purpose, the main source of information or inspiration was the Transmonet database. Of course, we are not relying only on the data from the Transmonet database. We are currently using 15 quantitative indicators. You have a few outlined here on this PowerPoint slide. Then we were still not fully satisfied, because what we wanted was the index to reflect the child protection systems components, which actually are needed in order to have a fully functional child protection system. And here we are talking about the policy, legal and regulatory framework, services, processes, mechanisms, capacity, accountability, and coordination, which are the 5 main components needed in order to have a functional child protection system. So what happened was that this idea came to our mind to combine these child protection system components with the UNCRC child rights-based indicators. So we decided to place each indicator under the child protection system component that it contributes to measure in a matrix that looks more or less like this. This way, actually, we have 500 main indicators. All in all, we have over 600 indicators included in the index matrix, which are placed, as you see, in a way that allows to measure policy, services, capacity, accountability, and coordination. And the nice thing is that because we are using the same approach, the same indicators, the same methodology in all the countries, the results are comparable. What we are doing is to look at policy, services, capacity, accountability, and coordination through the lens of the child rights-based approach indicators. After developing the index matrix, of course, we needed to check it first before starting the testing of it. So we had an internal and external review. For that, we dedicated a couple of months for that. And after having this review, we went for piloting it. And the first pilot was Romania. The first test was Romania. After that, we did some adjustments, and then we decided to go for piloting it in 9 countries, as you see them here. So far, we've covered Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Moldova and Georgia. Armenia is on its way, and we are preparing to implement it further to Kosovo, Albania, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this is what the first results looked like. Yep, it's a bit scary, isn't it? Everybody, when they saw first this kind of results, they said, "Oh, how are we going to read this?" So what you see here are the results from Moldova, actually, and I will help a bit with how we can read this. Okay, so look at the scores down here. Actually, they're reflecting the scores for each component. You have scores for each article here, and then the score for general environment, for social work, outcome, output, and the total score, which is here, 0.5 to 7 is the general score of Moldova, which is not a very high score, I have to say, because the maximum score, obviously, it's 1. As you see, there is a very low score here on capacity, which discusses human resources, financial resources, infrastructure, and so on. And I have to say here that most of the countries in the region are actually facing difficulties on this particular component, and also on accountability, which is looking at data management and reporting, quality control mechanisms, at complaint mechanisms. public awareness, and so on. So here, actually, again, most of the countries in the region are facing difficulties and also on coordination. Usually, these three are the places where countries are scoring lowest in the region. Gap, as you see, the gap represents the difference between policy and implementation. A bigger gap is bad. Smaller gap is good. So the closer implementation is to policy, to the policy framework, the better. Now, when we look at the scores here on Moldova, you will see, for instance, for Article 23, which discusses children with disabilities, a very, very big gap on this article, with a pretty good policy level and far low implementation. So there is a big gap, which means that from a policy point of view, the provisions are good. However, when it comes about implementation, the situation is dramatic. Look here at the services with a very low score, actually, which reflects the situation of services addressing children with disabilities in Moldova. So actually, we can go on and on with interpreting the data this way. However, this would be, as I said, rather complicated. I just want to point out that there are places where we have, for instance, very low scores, for instance, here on accountability, which are, worrying. So what I want to say here is that basically we have much more information than what you see here. But it would be very difficult to interpret it this well. Just multiply this what you see here with 9 countries. It would be really problematic to work this way. So we have to take into consideration ways of better presenting our results, ways to make this more accessible and user friendly. I have to say before moving to the next slide that behind each component, behind each article, there is a wealth of information, because this is actually split into indicators, and there is information on each specific indicator. So it allows us to go into as much detail as we want. Okay, somebody said that good data visualization comes from the successful marriage of design or pictures and data. Well, we know that children are learning easier when this is associated with pictures, with colorful pictures, drawings, and so on. And we were thinking that we need to learn from that. And we started to work on the data visualization aspects. We are not there yet, I would say. We still have work to do. But here are some examples of ways that are probably easier to understand. Now, I'll start with the outcome and output, or quantitative data results. As you see here, we have the 5 pilot countries on which we finalized the data collection. And here, Serbia is the leader, and actually this is because they have been scoring very well on most of the data required. Georgia was a very strong performer here, actually, also reflecting the efforts done by this country to towards the institutionalization. However, and they were scoring highest actually on 6 out of 15 indicators. However, still Serbia is the first. As you see, Moldova is the last, and Bulgaria is on the 4th position. I see a hand raised. Okay. So Bulgaria is on the 4th position, mainly because they all had problems reporting the required data. So there are data management issues at national level there. On the governance environment, which is based on the requirements of Article 4, as I mentioned earlier, here we have 11 indicators that we considered. Romania is here the best performer, and here we have again Bulgaria and Georgia on the last two positions. It's a bit surprising to see Bulgaria on the 4th position here. However, the data reflected the fact that there are still issues that need to be addressed in Bulgaria to score better here. One thing that actually none of the countries has, and this is concerning really, is the fact that in none of the countries where we implemented the index so far, we could find permanent arrangements established for budgetary analysis at national levels to a certain proportion of overall budgets devoted to children and disparities in these allocations. So this is an area of concern which probably will need to be addressed through advocacy at regional level, because it concerns all countries. Further on, let's move to the mainframe indicators that we mentioned earlier. Here we have Romania and Bulgaria leading. I would say that this is not a surprise, because the reform processes started earlier in these two countries, and in the meantime we also turned. Sorry, I hear a microphone open. Okay. Moldova and Georgia actually were very close to each other on the last two places. Here are the mainframe components that are actually contributing to the score that you've seen earlier. So comparing policy, services, capacity, coordination, and accountability, on all of them, Romania is first, Bulgaria second, and Serbia the third. And as you can see, between Moldova and Georgia, the situation is very tight for the last position. Actually, the difference between Moldova and Georgia for the final score is made mainly by the better policy situation, so the better legal and regulatory framework in Moldova. And let's look at this slide. actually, which shows pretty well this this situation. As you see, Moldova has here a policy score which is close to Serbia's. And Georgia is with a policy score which is much lower. Now, even if Georgia has a small gap between policy implementation, the fact that Moldova has a better policy score, even if they have a big gap, this helps them to score better in the end. And we realized that, as you see, countries with a better policy basis, with better legal and regulatory framework, are in the end, at the end of the day, performing better also on implementation at the end of the day, because better policy actually helps in the end to pull up the implementation as well. Why in Moldova we have a big gap here is because many of these legal and regulatory framework aspects have been adopted recently, and there was not enough time for implementation. But if we go back, if we will go back probably to Moldova in a couple of years, we will almost surely see a much smaller gap and a much better implementation in place. So what I wanted to stress out is the importance of the policy basis, the importance of the legal and regulatory framework as a basis to start with. Okay. On social work here we had 5 indicators. We used 5 indicators. Obviously, this is an area where we will need to further develop the index, because and this is best reflected by Romania's score, which is 1, which is, I would say, unrealistic. But based on the five indicators that we've used so far, yes, all those were fulfilled by Romania, and it's interesting that they were enough to differentiate between these 5 countries so far. Again, Romania is scoring best, followed here by Bulgaria and by Serbia and Bulgaria, and Georgia is again on the last position. Okay, and these are the overall country scores, which are actually bringing together all the scores you've seen so far. So this is a cross-regional comparison on the countries that have completed so far the index, the first 5 pilot countries. And as you see, Romania and Bulgaria are first and second. And it's not surprising because, again, reform processes started earlier here in these countries, and on their way to joining to EU, there was a lot of work going on to align their policies with the CRC requirements. Serbia, it's on its way, so not surprising that it's on the 3rd place. And as I said, the difference between Georgia and Moldova was actually made by the better policy level in Moldova. Well, we launched the Child Protection Index officially in Moldova and Georgia. As Mirela mentioned earlier, the policy dialogue needs to start, and from our point of view, this is the best starting point. You can find the briefs published for Moldova and for Georgia on the ChildPact's site. Launches were quite successful, and as again Mirela mentioned earlier, they attracted a lot of interest, especially in Georgia. The next steps, as I mentioned earlier, are Albania, Kosovo, Armenia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. With Armenia, we started already. By the end of this week, I expect to get draft inputs from the team there. And we are quite advanced with selecting the team for Albania. With Kosovo, we finalized that process, and we will have training at the end of this month to start the implementation. And we are also pretty advanced with Bosnia and Herzegovina. We hope to be able to finalize these pilots by the end of this year. This is the plan, and I hope that this is what is going to happen. I would like to use this opportunity to thank all those who supported our project. I have to say that we all think and hope that Child Protection Index will really contribute to find ways to accelerate the reform processes in our countries, because children do not belong in institutions, and the only place where they do belong is in their families. So I hope that the index will help us understand better and faster what needs to be done in order to make this reality. These are our contact details, and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Andy, very much. I can see there are at least 2 questions to you. Can you see them in the Q&A section?
Person, what about the fields that do not? Just a second, I have to. Okay. The fields that do not contain a score, that means that we do not have indicators for those specific fields. Okay, so that's one of the questions. And did the indicators also include qualitative measures of social work? Yes. As I said, we had 5 indicators which were qualitative, not quantitative. We did have some quantitative indicators on social work in the quantitative data area. So what we looked at was, first of all, if social work is regulated by law officially, if it's a university degree, if there is a professional body for social work, if there is training available and compulsory for continuous education, and also if there is a code of ethics adopted for social workers. Okay, so that was the second question. And I don't know, any other questions? Okay, can you provide a brief description on how you pass from the metrics to the actual scores? Yes, as I mentioned, the indicators are formulated as questions. Each question is formulated in a way that it should be replied with yes, no, or partially. Of course, that the replies have to be documented. which means that yes will be scored 1, no will be scored 0, partially will be scored 0.5. Where we have a main indicator which is composed of several sub-indicators, those sub-indicators will be marked separately, like yes, no, yes, partially, and so on, and they will contribute to the score for that main indicator, which means that that specific indicator can be 0.33 or something like that. As an average of the indicators that are making it up. Okay, I hope that Valbona. Okay. Thank you for your compliments. Okay. I have one more question here. How are you dealing with the situation in which you are lacking data, always having blank scoring? No, when, for instance, where we didn't have data, or let's say where the country was not able to provide the data, that was actually penalized with 0. There is where we don't have scoring, for instance, it's because we choose there not to have indicators, because we couldn't actually come up with indicators to cover those area. We are not giving weights to indicators. Each indicator is scoring equally. Okay, what else is here? I don't know if I missed anything. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure that I covered all the answer. Yeah, I think I've covered all this question from Phil. Okay. Tanya, let's see what Tanya said. Would you like to ask if a report on CPI results will be written on local languages? Yeah, actually, we very much wish for that. In Moldova, they already did that. So hopefully this is what is going to happen in all the countries. My secret wish is also to have the entire framework translated, so that it would be easily accessible for the experts from from each of these countries. So, yeah. Okay. Did I miss any question? Right. Okay. I think that's it.
Andy,
Yeah.
I think there is a question from Stephanie, an additional one. She says, thanks for this answer, but I was thinking about the actual practice, which I'm not, yeah. Can you see that question?
Yeah, I see it now. Which I'm not sure. Just a second. Thanks for this answer, but I was thinking about the actual practice. Yeah, as I said, well, those questions were about the actual practice. Those 5 questions. Now, as I said, on social work, we have to clearly do more work and develop that part of the index. We decided to include social work, the social work environment in the index at a very late stage, and there was not very much time to better develop it, and basically we decided to go with these five main indicators. Obviously, we need to go further there, because I know that, as we all know, that there are issues with the social work environment in this region, with people who are employed as social workers, even if they are not social workers, and so on. So obviously, this is something that we further need to develop. I have to say that this is a pilot, and this is what a pilot is for, in order to identify places where we need to better develop and refine the index. So following the pilot stage next year, the main thing to do would be to further develop the index, maybe give up some of the indicators which are redundant, reconsider, refine other areas of the index. So, and here the entire teams that contributed so far to the implementation of the index, their input is going to be extremely important for all of us. I hope that I was able to answer the question. Natya, how resource heavy is the assessment process? It's not very resource heavy. Just a second. Can countries apply the tool on their own? So far, the countries cannot apply the tool on their own, because they would need somebody who knows the tool and would be able to lead the process. So far, I'm the one who's doing that. In terms of resources, we are using experts from the countries. Actually, we are working with 6 child protection experts plus 2 legal experts in each country, in a way that allows for each indicator to be independently reviewed by 2 different experts. In terms of time, each expert probably the time effort is around 15 days of work, around, could be more, depending on availability of data. So, and as funds, I think it was somewhere up to 5,000 euro per country so far. But as I said, this is a limited version. This is a pilot version. So I hope that this will develop, and if it's going to develop, then probably additional funds will be required. It's important that we were able to find adequate experts in each country, even if we were limited by communication obstacles, the fact that we had to find people experts who also speak English. Hopefully we will be able to deal with this in the future, so that we can extend the area of selection for the experts. So, okay, is there any other question? I hope that I didn't miss anything. Yeah. Stephanie says that, just a second. Okay, just a second. I cannot open this. Ah, okay. Okay, I would be very happy to do that, Stephanie, as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you.
It was a great pleasure and very interesting indeed. And thank you everybody for your kind feedback and the questions. Before we finish, I would like to say that we are going to have a few more webinars coming this autumn. Tomorrow we are going to have one on safer internet for children, but it's going to be in Serbo-Croatian, so if you speak the language, please feel free to join us. It's going to be very interesting, I feel. Then in October, on the 15th, we are going to have a webinar on the place of the war past of the parents in their children's identity, the Bosnia and Herzegovina experience. And in November, we are planning a webinar on deinstitutionalizations and many, many more. So please follow the webinars page on our website. I will share a link with you here in the chat. Hope you can access it and join us in the future as well. It was nice having you all here today. Have a nice day and evening, and I hope to talk to you later again. Thank you. Bye.